Hi everybody, welcome to Woman Up. I'm Leah and I'm joined by Sue Clark. Hi Sue.
Hi Leah, how are you?
I'm all right, I've had enough, quite frankly. It seems to be one thing after another this week, but we're here to talk about the children this week, really,
Yeah.
and what happened in Victoria. So let's start with the absolutely shameful Victorian MPs who voted down. They voted down Moira Deeming's motion for an inquiry into the harmful medicalized gender affirmation model for minors. So, do you want to give us a rundown of what Moira Deeming was actually going for here?
Yeah, she wants an inquiry into the gender affirming model that's being used in Victoria, and the model that they rely upon has been basically banned or modified overseas, but in Victoria they don't seem to consider that the model they're using has got a lot of question marks over it. So I saw a bit of the debate, not a lot, but a bit. I caught a few of the Greens and Labor MPs getting up, and they didn't talk about the children. They spoke about themselves and, being trans and the poor trans people and how we're trying to erase them.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank everybody for their contributions today. So I couldn't help but notice that most of the people on the other side of the chamber spent more time talking about themselves and their own identities and their own government and who their friends are, and how it was such a waste of their time to have to spend time on a subject like this. Well, I have to remind you all that it is not about you, it is about children and what they deserve. And what they deserve is evidence-based care. And that is not what they're getting in Victoria. Talk about participation. Is it going to help children participate when they've got fistulas? Is it going to help them participate, like the little girl in Sweden who went on puberty blockers and her spine eroded to the point where she cannot walk anymore, she's in a wheelchair? Are you going to help them with their dignity when they have secondary gender dysphoria because after they desist, they now feel like they no longer fit in to either category, and because the damage in this case is permanent, they don't know what to do with the rest of their lives? Is it progressive to let minors have full hysterectomies and go into catastrophic early dementia by the time they're 30 and end up in care homes? I don't think so. I don't actually think that sounds anything like love. I couldn't believe the amount of non-arguments that I just heard, and the abuse and the personal attacks, which have absolutely nothing to do with what is best for children. It doesn't matter about their sexuality. The amount of you that brought up sexuality, it's nothing to do with their sexuality. It's nothing really to do with anything except evidence-based care. I didn't deny the existence of gender dysphoria. I didn't say it wasn't hard. I think it's a terrible thing for a child to have, and I want them to get the very best care in the whole world. Countries that you have all praised for their progressive approach on this very issue, who have now changed their minds due to massive research projects, you are now ignoring as if they don't exist. There are people in this gallery that belong to the LGBTQI community and they don't agree with you, and they were harmed. You can attack me all you want, you can call me terrible names, and it will not do anything to help those children get evidence-based care, which is all this motion is about. I raise parents' rights because parents are the very best and first protectors of their children. They know their children more than anyone else. I couldn't believe it as a teacher when I found out I had permission to lie to parents if their kids decided to socially transition at school. Teachers shouldn't have that power. They don't know enough about the personal life. I do believe in experts having a say. That's why I want this inquiry. That's why teachers who are not experts should never be involved in such a massive clinical decision. Clinicians themselves don't even have the freedom now to do proper care of their patients and individualised based care. That's just a lie. We have set in stone through legislation in Victoria one treatment pathway and one treatment pathway only. And it just so happens to be the treatment pathway that is doing catastrophic, irreversible harm to children. Why would you let your hate for me, which by the way is totally unfounded, get in the way of an honest look at what's best for children in this situation? The fact that you spent half your time attacking me and labelling your opponents with nasty names instead of dealing with the actual issue at hand is honestly disappointing. I'm sure you're all very nice people to the people that you like, but children come first in this motion. And honestly, I didn't think that this motion would get up. I just wanted to have it on record, the exact names of all the people who voted against this common sense motion. There was nothing in there that could possibly be remotely accused of being hateful or transphobic or homophobic or any kind of phobia. Either your conclusions, your view would have been proven correct, or mine would have. Or maybe neither of us, maybe some other version. But for the safety and welfare of children, we absolutely should have done it. You certainly don't mind spending money on whatever you want or debt, so it's not like you're going to run out of money or resources. And this is one thing that is absolutely worth every dollar, because I am sick and tired and traumatised myself from meeting all these detransitioners like the ones up here, these brave women and these brave men who come back 10, 15, 20 years later, maybe not even that long sometimes, all over the world it's happening, and they're saying, why did you let me do this? Why did anybody let me do this? Why did they allow this to happen? You don't let us get tattoos, you don't let us go out beyond a certain hour, you don't let us watch certain TV shows. You control us in a lot of other ways, but why would you let us make this decision, which is catastrophic, irreversible and permanent? Thank you.
It was actually it was quite disgusting. And there was Mel Jeffries, who was a detransitioner in Victoria, and she's been on Spotlight. And she was in Parliament that day. And another woman, Jo, who's a detransitioner from New South Wales, she came up. And I saw something that Mel put out the other day, and she said it was like they're invisible, the detransitioners.
Attending the discussion at Parliament on Wednesday was difficult. I didn't expect it to impact me as much as it did. To hear those responses put forth to the outline motion for an inquiry and hear the underlying concerns dismissed so easily was disappointing. There was a lot of derailing, whataboutisms and showmanship on display. A lot of the responses focused on the importance of lived experience and the need to hear from people who have first-hand knowledge. Yet I walked away feeling that I didn't matter to most in that room. Many didn't make eye contact, let alone acknowledge me. To me, this highlights that there is an acceptable level of collateral damage for these bad ideas and bad policies. We have had 2 Royal Commissions in the past 5 years, one for disability and one specifically for mental health in Victoria. I attended and testified about my experience for the Royal Commission into mental health. But now I'm left wondering, how do they reconcile these ideas? That on one hand, they espouse that the healthcare services that youth and adults access for gender-affirming care are working effectively, that they have a robust evidence base and near 0 cases of regret. Yet on the other, these services reside within a healthcare system that has required 2 separate Royal Commissions to understand the failings of them. Something doesn't add up. Hearing the Minister for Health say that the motions were unacceptable and hateful towards trans people, honestly, it was embarrassing. This kind of rhetoric stifles the ability to even have a discussion. They quoted stats that I would have been counted amongst and even been a data point for as a means to squash the debate. Several MPs stood up and said that they stand for and value equality here in Victoria. You know what I value? Honesty and truth. That's why I want to see an honest and frank discussion about these concerns, not just regurgitated talking points or name calling. This unwillingness to hear feedback from detransitioners with lived experience is detrimental and reduces the ability to improve the quality of healthcare services received. And I don't know about you, I don't know how serious I can take a politician who says they care about equality, but isn't interested in hearing feedback from everyone who has concerns regarding the functioning of our healthcare system. Thank you.
And yeah, it's just shocking. It's really shocking. They don't want to have an inquiry into gender affirming healthcare.
Yeah, and the fact that it's called health, that it's called care, is a complete misnomer. Because there's nothing caring about what they're doing to children. So let's just describe what the affirmation model is. It's the model taken from Sweden, which incidentally Sweden no longer uses. It's when a child comes to the GP or gender therapist, I suppose, that they get referred to. If a child says that they're trans, then they are believed and encouraged and affirmed in the delusion that they are the opposite sex, born in the wrong body, however you want to put it. There's no evidence to say that this approach helps children whatsoever. If you watch, and I'll link to the excellent Dr. Gillian Spencer's talk. Gillian Spencer is a senior child and adolescent psychiatrist from the Queensland Children's Hospital. She's been
treated like shit.
Baby brain. Basically been treated like shit because she wants an evidence-based treatment for children with gender dysphoria. So the affirmation model claims to be life-saving to prevent suicide. There's absolutely no evidence for that. Puberty blockers are then given to children who say they're trans, and they're usually prescribed between the ages of 10 to 12 years old. They're given under the illusion of giving the child and the parents time to think, but 60 to 90% of children will recover from gender dysphoria if they're left alone to go through normal puberty. But children who do take puberty blockers, 95% of these children will go on to take cross-sex hormones. Puberty blockers cause fatigue, hot flushes, bone density abnormalities. They make children infertile. They make them so they have no sexual function in the future. And that's just the biological effects. Psychological effects are just as bad and irreversible.
Especially when they go through going on puberty blockers, then onto cross-sex hormones, then they have surgery, and they're still feeling miserable. And they think, and can you imagine coming to the realization that you've just gone through all that and realized you feel more suicidal because of what you've done to your body? It's just horrific. And here we have Labor and the Greens and the Animal Justice Party who vote no. It's just
no to an inquiry. It's like having a burning building and saying, oh, I'm not going to bother checking if there's anyone in there.
Yeah.
Even if there might be. Just check. Just have a look. Just have a little look. No, they voted no to an inquiry for the harmful effects of this ridiculous model that's being pushed on children. Rachel Wong from the Women's Forum Australia says she separately requested meetings with Labour Premier Jacinta Allen and Minister for Children Lizzie Blandthorne, Minister for Children, so that they could meet with and hear the personal experience of Melbourne woman Mel Jeffries, who you just mentioned, a young female detransitioner who has been irreversibly harmed by gender affirmation treatments and surgeries, but her requests were ignored.
Yeah, and that's just what they do. That's standard practice. They just ignore it. You know, with all these doctors that are calling for an inquiry, and even legal minds like Patrick Parkinson, and on that, was on the Women's Forum YouTube, that Child Safeguarding and Consent Forum of 2023 that was held in Melbourne on the 3rd of October. It's just brilliant. It's just really, really, really brilliant. And Gillian Spencer, she's the first main speaker. It's just, now I've lost my train of thought. What was I going to say?
We were talking about how they've been ignored.
Yeah. But there were politicians. There are politicians. And the problem is Labor and Greens are basically the same party now. And they hold the balance of power. So nothing the Liberals put forward, even Pauline Hanson, One Nation, she's called for an inquiry 3 times into federal politics, and Labor and the Greens have said no. So the only reason it can be is because the truth will come out. They're afraid of the truth. They know that these kids are just collateral damage, and it affirms autogynephiles, the men that, in later stages of life, pretend that they're a woman. And then they say, well, we don't have to have a sex reassignment surgery, not that you can ever change sex. So the vast majority of them are fully intact men, because it's against human rights for them to be forced to have that surgery. But for children, we've got to cut off bits and, it's so hypocritical. It's so different for these autogynephiles to these kids, what these kids are being forced into.
Yeah, Jennifer Billick, who I love, and who has just been speaking about this for years, and who piques me, she says the transgender child, quotes, is a corporate legal construct necessary for substantiating the evolution of an adult male fetish into an industry of owning women's reproductive capacities via medical technology. An adult male fetish of owning womanhood is a very hard sell. Children distressed about feeling wrong in their sexed realities, being promoted as an identity, needing protection and rights, hits the marketing sweet spot. And it's so true, because why are all these companies, organisations, huge corporate groups, banks, why are they suddenly so interested in your personal identity? It's all about money. It's all about cash.
Yep, it's an industry.
It's an industry, and it props up these AGP men without the idea of a trans child.
Validation, because then they're saying, look, all these kids, their gendered soul, humans in the past have not been able to express their gendered soul.
Yeah.
By confusing these kids, particularly with autism, and other traumas in their life, and they think the answer is through transitioning, because as soon as they express they've got some sort of distress, it's automatic affirmation.
Let's just give a rundown of these a-hole politicians that have voted this down in Victoria. So you've got Lizzie Blandthorne, Labour.
And she's the Minister for Children, isn't she?
Yes,
yeah.
She is. So you've got Lizzie Blandthorne, who is Minister for Children. Sonia Terpstra, Labour, Minister for Women. Sheena Watt, Labour. Harriet Shing, Labour, who is also a lesbian and quite frankly should know better.
Yeah.
Jacinda Makora, Labour. Ingrid Stitt, Labour, was until recently the Minister for Early Childhood, and now she's the Minister for Mental Health.
Oh my
You couldn't make this up.
No.
Gail Turney, Labour. Tom McIntosh, Labour. Sean Lean, Labour. It's very Labour heavy. John Berger, Labour. Ryan Batchelor, Labour. Michael Gallia, Labour. Lee Talamis, Labour. Enver Erdogan, Labour. Samantha Ratnam, Greens. Catherine Copsey, Greens. Sarah Mansfield, Greens. Ave Puglielli, Greens. David Ettishank, legalised cannabis. Rachel Payne, legalised cannabis. And Georgie Purcell of the Animal Justice Party, who is the youngest woman in Victorian government, ex-stripper, ex-pole dancer and topless waiter.
Yeah. And the Animal Justice Party fights for animals and nature with the animal research that's used for this gender-affirming care. It completely goes against what the Animal Justice Party... And then they talk about nature.
Yeah.
Can you get any further removed from nature than doing what they're doing to these kids' bodies?
I found this interesting from Ryan Batchelor in Labour, who said, quote, "So to the drag queens who just want to read a story, we stand with you. To the rainbow families who love their children, we stand with you. But to the hate groups who marshal on our front steps, our message is clear. You may be surprised. People in this state are getting organised, and you are bound to lose. You fascists are bound to lose.
This is a Labor politician.
That's a Labour politician, Ryan Batchelor. And I like the way he conflates gay families with drag queens who want to read in a sexualised way to children. You know, it's not the same thing.
Oh my God.
The Women's Forum Australia say, to add insult to injury, today during a speech in the Victorian Legislative Assembly, Victorian Labour Minister for Health, Mary Ann Thomas, with the support of Victorian Labour Premier Jacinta Allen, disgracefully grouped Moira Deeming's common sense motion in with deliberate campaigns of trans hate. Why does protecting children always get lumped in with trans hate?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it? But that's a message that they continuously want to push. They think that it's, and it is it successful brainwashing, because we know the majority of the public don't support it, but maybe they, I don't know. It's just, you would think if any doctors, as particularly with Gillian, with her wanting to have an inquiry into, you know, in Queensland, when you've got 70 odd doctors that are saying this is harming children, and obviously there's a number of doctors in every state that want this inquiry. And when you think, okay, well, they think it's harmful, let's go ahead and do it just to satisfy the critics that it's not harmful and that it's actually good for these kids.
Exactly.
Yeah, but they don't want it because they know the truth will come out. Because most people know the truth, but they live in their bubble. But these politicians, how the hell did these people get into politics?
I don't know. I mean, there's certain people in the world where morality comes before lying in your pockets, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
I feel like at the moment these people are just interested in that completely selfish, unless they've got, you know, children who say they're trans or family members who say they're trans, which is quite possible with the numbers that we're seeing of these kids that are saying that they're trans. It's quite possible that they just feel like they can't go against people in their family who are saying this.
Also, the trans community is saying, you know, there's hardly anyone that detransitions. And when I was watching the Child Safeguarding and Consent Forum, it was Mel Jeffries that said, why would you go back to the people that harm you when you know you've done the right thing? And she said,
these kids have been completely medically abused.
Yeah. And it was a very good point that Mel made, was going, she wouldn't go back to the people that did this harm to her. So, you know, and even if they go back to the trans community, they hate detransitioners. They turn their back on them and go, well, you were never trans to begin with. So, you know, so they don't want to know about the detransitioners. But, you know, so these people that are doing the surgeries and medicalizing children, of course, why would they go back to them? They just wouldn't, because they know they've been harmed.
And some of these kids, after they've had these surgeries that have just completely butchered them, and they do go back for a revision, I always wonder how they feel when they go back into that room.
Yeah.
Knowing what they're about to be going through again. I mean, it's really heartbreaking. It's absolutely just heartbreaking. And but the tide is turning, because there are a lot of countries now who are ditching this approach, the affirmation approach. In March, for example, the Norwegian Healthcare Investigation Board said it would revise its current clinical recommendations with respect to gender-affirming care for minors. The updated guidelines would restrict the use of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and transition-related surgery to clinical research settings, which I'm very suspicious of anyway. Just imagine if you told someone 10 years ago that a child would have a sex change surgery. How mental does that sound?
Yeah.
Rightly so. Norway joins other European nations such as Finland, Sweden, and the UK in introducing limits on the provision of gender-affirming care to minors. Gender-affirming care is complete misnomer.
Yeah.
Nothing caring about mutilating the bodies of children and disturbing the minds of children. It's unreal that every day I think, how much longer can this go on for?
Yeah. It just seems to get worse and worse within governments. We can see the public, the tide has turned with the public, but we've got leaders in local government, in state government and federal government that are putting this barrier.
Yeah.
So, you know, and they don't want to know how the public feels, because they know they know how the public feels, and that's why no state has consulted with women about giving away women's rights to these men. So they just don't consult because they already know the answer. And so if they
exactly, and objectively, a sex change for a minor just sounds ridiculously absurd.
It is.
So it's not just the biological, physical butchery that these poor children are going through and confused teenagers, but it's the lies as well that are being passed on to our kids.
Yeah.
State-sanctioned lies that they're getting fed to at school and everywhere. Lies that you're assigned a sex at birth.
Well, look at the teacher. When we did that, we did a protest outside of Parliament House. I think it was the 12th of October, and we were standing there with signs. One said, quite large, our big banner, adult woman, adult human female. And then you made that other great sign, Leah, which was, the truth isn't hate speech. Was that it?
It's not hate to speak the truth.
Yeah. And then coming up the street, that we see these young kids with their teacher. And I think she said to us...
Well, we saw them walking up and we thought, let's space away because the kids need to get through, and we're not, you know, we're not going to start protesting to a load of, what were they, grade 6?
Grade 6.
Kids. Yeah, go on, carry on.
Yeah, and so she walks past with the kids, and I think I can't remember, I think she said something, but I can't remember. But
the kids were giving us the thumbs up.
Yeah, because they were behind the teacher.
Yeah.
So they were walking past and she was fuming. So she takes the kids into the parliamentary, or just outside the parliamentary annex, and comes back to us and says, how dare you? You've got no right to push this stuff on these kids. They're grade 6. And we're thinking, push this stuff on. She was just ropeable.
Yeah.
There. And then she told us to move on.
And then she complained to us about to the police.
Yeah.
Actually, because I thought it was security, but it was an actual police.
Yeah. And who do they send out? A trans-identifying police officer. Which he did control himself quite well, considering.
He did, but he looked at our signs and he did say, you know, children shouldn't be seeing this. It's like, children shouldn't be seeing a sign that says adult human female.
Yeah, but they can be told that they were born in the wrong body.
They can be told that they can change sex. They can be told that they are assigned a sex at birth and it might not necessarily be the correct one for them. I mean, what is this doing to their brains?
Yeah. But
they're thinking.
So that teacher, she was a trans activist. She was told us we were inappropriate. I looked at, because the school uniform, the top was blue and yellow, and I looked it up on the internet, and I believe it's Wamaran primary school that these kids come from. So the kids are more intelligent than the teacher, the ones that gave the thumb up. And then there was another group of students that were coming out. I think security stopped them and told them not to look at us, our signs. And then there was a different teacher was walking behind the kids, and the kids had to look straight ahead. But the teacher turned around and gave us this warm smile.
Mm.
So I really feel for
Mm.
the teachers that are compelled to teach this bullshit. You know, but that teacher accusing us of being inappropriate. We were there because the hate speech laws were being voted on that day, which will see misgendering a criminal offence, and you can be fined. And we really do. It all needs to be tested, because when you read the legislation, it can mean anything. And
misgendering, of course, doesn't actually mean misgendering. It means correctly sexing the person that you see in front of you as a man or a woman.
Yeah, that's right.
And not lying.
Yeah, but there are school kids that are pushing back too, because a few weeks ago it was the Parental Rights Committee of Australia. They had a massive protest in Sydney, over 5,000 of them. And anyway, they sent out, and that didn't make the media in Australia, no. 5,000 people of faith protesting against what's happening in school, and it didn't make the news. And you just think, oh my God, if that can't make the news alone, 5,000 is a massive, over 5,000 is a massive attendance. But anyway, we knew about, there were 50 school kids in New South Wales that were suspended, and we just assumed, because we didn't have the details, that probably they misgendered or said something negative to another trans kid or whatever. But then they put out this email to supporters, and it said that the 50 children that were suspended actually took down pride flags and burnt them on the school grounds. So these are kids pushing back. They've had enough. There's an uprising of even school children.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
Yeah. I think the way this is being pushed is just, no one would have ever expected this.
No. Thank God there are kids that can see through it, because you fear for all these kids because they're at a very vulnerable age. And you just...
I know. And some of the kids are very vulnerable because a lot, this is targeting autistic kids and lonely kids, kids that have been abused. It's just
horrific, isn't it?
Yeah. I read a really, really good article that was shared in our group that I had missed, and it's from 2019, and it's called "The Document That Reveals the Remarkable Tactics of Trans Lobbyists." Don't know if you've read it.
No, I haven't, no.
But the document is the work of Dentons, which says it's the world's biggest law firm, the Thomson Reuters Foundation, an arm of the old media giant that appears dedicated to identity politics of various sorts, and the IGLYO, which is the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer and Intersex Youth and Student Organisation. God, it's such a mouthful.
It is, yeah.
It suggests that states should take action against parents who are obstructing the free development of a young trans person's identity in refusing to give parental authorization when required. So it's basically a handbook on how to separate children from their primary caregivers. It's really scary.
Yeah.
So you can see how it's taken hold. This article is only a 5-minute read, and I'm going to link it in the description. Everybody should read this and send it to someone who's sitting on the fence, who doesn't know how this has become so big, because this document has been very influential. The introduction says, research shows that transgender children, there's no such thing as a transgender child, is being accepted and allowed to live as themselves benefits their mental well-being massively. It allows them to enjoy their childhood and teenage years and everything that comes with it. School, friendship, games and playing, affection, everything that makes a child, without the extra stress of having to worry about being transgender. Legal gender recognition for minors is therefore an essential part in the safeguarding and ensuring the mental and physical well-being of transgender youth. Now, this was written by Ugla Stefania, who is a man who is pretending to be a woman, and it's extremely worrying that we've got these men, fully grown men, who enjoy dressing as women, who, in my opinion, are completely porn addicted, because you don't get from being a man to a man who dresses up in women's clothes, underwear, without watching a shitload of porn. These men are advising on the well-being of children who are totally confused, and they're advising as to how they should be medically altered just for being gender non-conforming.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy. What do we do? How do we stop this tidal wave when we've got this much power behind the movement, which is coming from the biggest law firm in the world, putting out these documents? How do we stop this?
It's just, well, we will. There's no doubt we will. It's just, voting out those politicians and voting in the politicians that see reality, know what's going on. You know, there's a lot of Labor politicians that can't speak out, and you can probably bet that some of those Labor MPs in the Victorian government didn't believe in it, but they're compelled to vote in line with what the party wants. It's a very authoritarian political party, really.
Well, one tip from this document says that you should tie your campaign to more popular reform. For example, in Ireland, Denmark and Norway, changes to the law on gender recognition were put through at the same time as other more popular reforms such as marriage equality legislation. This provided a veil of protection, particularly in Ireland, where marriage equality was strongly supported, but gender identity remained a more difficult issue to win public support for. That's their words.
Yeah.
That's in their words.
Yeah.
They're saying it out loud, that they sneak these things through, and that's how the TQ plus has been conflated with the LGB, which has nothing to do with sexual perversions.
It's just hard to believe that we have political leaders who have got their own children that are allowing this harm to happen to children. They'd have to know that the kids are being used as a shield. They'd have to know. And if they don't, why the hell are they?
Well, they shouldn't be in the job.
No.
You've got literally ministers for women and ministers for children who are saying that they don't want an inquiry. They will not accept an inquiry into the harm that this is doing to women and children. It's just absolutely backwards.
They've completely erased woman. The term woman is now, we've been eliminated.
Yeah.
And we're just referred to as body parts now.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just leaves you speechless.
As I told you already, I was in the women's hospital yesterday, and there was a sign saying a pronoun sign, and it's very off-putting to see something like that as a woman who knows what's going on. To someone who doesn't know what's going on, it probably seems quite innocent, but that's how they sneak this stuff in.
But it's triggering for women that do understand it, particularly when you're in there because you're pregnant.
Yeah.
And you see, and you just
there was probably 7 or 8 other pregnant women in that waiting room. And it says to me when I see a sign like that, that this hospital pledges its allegiance to misogynistic ideology.
Yeah, it does.
And I'm actually surprised that it's still called the Brisbane Women's Hospital. I wouldn't be surprised if they changed the name.
What do you reckon they'd change it to?
What?
What would they call it?
I reckon they would probably just change it to Royal Brisbane Hospital.
Look, there's already a Royal Brisbane Hospital.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, the women, and that's the women's hospital. And there's the, yeah. With that child safeguarding and consent forum, because they had Patrick Parkinson and another guy who's a lawyer, but they were talking about there's 4 main insurance providers for the medical professionals, and one has withdrawn its support. So there's still 3, so which will cover medical practitioners, because they're saying there's going to be, you know, class actions. It's inevitable that what's going to happen in the coming years. So, but they were saying that you've got the medical professionals in private practice, but in public, they don't need to be insured. So, you know, and they were saying if the 4 insurance providers, they all said, no, we're not going to insure you, the doctors, for any malpractice or whatever, but there's still the public hospital. And thank God there's a long waiting list at the public hospital, because I was saying, who was it that said by the time, I think it might have been Edie Wyatt on Welcome to the Dollhouse, and she was saying that thank God there's a 2-year waiting list by the time they come around. A lot of them have gone through puberty and they no longer want the surgery.
A lot of them have, but a lot of them are put on puberty blockers.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
which is, in my mind, is just assuring that they do go to the surgery.
Well, hopefully, but there's going to be some that go, oh, this is boring now, you know. So it will save some lives. But yeah, and you just think, God, I wish all these insurance providers would withdraw their support and just say, no, we're no longer covering. So for one major medical insurance provider to go, no, we're no longer going to cover you, they know what's coming. They know what's coming.
But of course, you get a lot of these girls who will save up for their double mastectomies.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Double mastectomies that we know in Brisbane are being performed on girls as young as 15.
They will.
15 years old.
But they will do that on kids as young as 13. But we've got no evidence that they have performed any.
Got no evidence that they have done a double mastectomy on a 13-year-old, and I'm praying that they haven't.
Yeah.
But they told me that they would. And you know, how can a 15-year-old consent to that?
Yeah, it's just madness. Another thing that I saw in response to the motion that Moira put up in Parliament, Victorian Parliament last week, Lee Hazel, I hadn't heard of her before. She's a detransitioner, and she wrote a letter to Jacinta Allen, and it was a fantastic letter about, you know, how horrified she was as a detransitioner. But at the end, she goes, what do you think is the most likely outcome of telling lonely and distressed children and young people over and over and over again that some people hate them? This is what makes kids more suicidal, it says, and it makes kids like them suicide. So it's not, you know, they keep telling everyone that we hate them. And so when you think about it, these kids that are distressed and they're thinking the public hates them, it's not because they're, it's just reinforcing. So I guess the more kids that suicide, that's also positive for these trans-identifying males as well, because then they can say, oh, if you don't transition them earlier, they'll kill themselves. So that pushes more kids through. for the
It's
fear of
such a disgusting, despicable lie
yeah.
to say to a
And we
child,
don't-
to put that
and we
in the
don't-
child, into an already struggling child's head, the thought of suicide. I mean, it's evil.
Yeah, it really is.
Gillian Spencer, when she was talking about breast binding as well, and how much that affects girls. And one thing she said was that the state is actively colluding with the disgust that some girls feel about themselves. And it's so true. To affirm a girl's hatred of her body in this way is just, I actually don't have words for it. To think that this is how medical professionals are now going about treating young girls, to agree that they are disgusting,
Yeah.
and that their bodies should be changed. I just can't get my head around it. And I can't get my head around MPs with the job title of Minister for Children or Minister for Women, how they're going along with this.
Or the Minister for Mental Health.
The Minister for Mental Health.
Yeah. And they're all women too, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, they're all women.
Biggest belief, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What the hell is wrong with these women?
Well, either they are stupid or they're corrupt.
John Euler said they're useful idiots. It's such a perfect term for them. They are useful idiots, not useful to society, but useful to men.
Yeah. I wonder if they'll ever see the damage that they've done.
Yeah. Hopefully they will live long enough to understand just how despicable they are.
Or will they always believe that they were doing the right thing?
Well, too bad. Like, how can you say, oh, I didn't know, when you've got like David Limbrick, you know, so many, Bev MacArthur and Victoria, you've got so many amazing politicians that are coming out of their comfort zone and speaking against it, asking for inquiries, and you sit there and you go, no, you can't claim ignorance. You just can't claim ignorance, because with you, you would think it's just because Labor has the balance of power that it's conveniently because Labor has got the balance of power that they can push this in federally and state so easily. Because if they didn't have the balance of power, you know, I never thought I'd come to say this, but I wish the LNP had the balance of power, because to me, how can so many Liberal and National Party politicians understand the damage this is doing? How come they can see it and they're fully informed, they educate themselves on it? Why is it with Labor they can't see it? And the Greens, forget the Greens, they're completely, utterly fucked now.
Just ever since we went to that, it wasn't even a protest, we were just there with our signs.
That was the National Labor Conference.
National Labour Conference, when we were standing there with our signs, there was no one around, and then suddenly we were circled by these fucking lunatics from the Greens. And I just think to myself, how have the Greens come so far from, you know, being annoying about the environment to this?
Yeah, I know. And they're just, but they really think they are so powerful. And I guess to a certain extent they are, because Labor is being their mouthpiece and they're doing exactly what the Greens want. So they do have power in that respect, indirect power.
So do you think they actually believe in this stuff? Or do you think they're doing what they can for power? To saying the right things to get into power?
They're not about to get into power with this.
Yeah.
But that Trina Massey, the councillor from the Gabba, I was astounded by the extent she went through lying about what happened in that park that day. She knows we've got footage. We've got footage from the time we walked into the park because Kaylee had her GoPro on, and she claimed that we entered the park and disrupted them. And then she comes back and she says to me, "You're not welcome here. You're not welcome anywhere." So in other words, I'm not welcome in my own country. Yeah. And that's what we continuously say to all of us is you're not welcome in this country.
Yeah.
And I said to her, I'm 5th generation Australian. Where do you suggest I go?
Mm.
But
did she have a suggestion?
But she didn't. But they are so arrogant. They don't have a problem with lying. They will lie about anything. And because I guess this is all based on a lie, do they know it's a lie? Well, she saw that we didn't come into that park and disrupt them. She knows exactly what happened. And so she basically said, by what she said to us, as a counsellor for the Gabba, unless you believe 100% in this ideology, she's not going to represent any ratepayer or resident of the Gabba if she finds out they're gender critical. Mm. They don't have a representative in council, and she made that quite clear. Mm. So why do the Greens think they've got so much power? Mm. I don't understand it. They're just completely and utterly corrupt.
Yeah, the whole thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Labor will survive because of the size of the party, but they need to weed these morons out. Get rid of Shannon Fentiman, Stephen Miles in Queensland. Then you go through.
Shannon Fentiman is a despicable woman.
Yeah.
She will actively ignore comments from her own constituents. She will turn off comments on her social media, and it's just unreal. She's the Minister for Health.
Yeah. And Minister for Women.
And the Minister for Women.
I think that was a strategic thing to remove her from the Attorney General portfolio and put her in as Minister for Health, because with the changes to the legislation, that means she can siphon money through to the gender clinics and, so... And it was Yvette Diath or Darth, however you pronounce it. She was the Minister for Health. So they took her, and because she's on the right of the Labor Party and the left of the Labor Party in Queensland, you've got Shannon Fentiman, Stephen Miles, all the really captured nutcases. So they removed Yvette Darth and gave her back the Attorney General portfolio. And then the health portfolio went to Shannon Fentiman. So I think it was a strategic change to that portfolio, because
it's all strategic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all backroom conversations. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
Yeah, because we know there are Labor politicians in Queensland, probably federally, other states that don't agree with this, but they don't have a voice. And
I don't understand how the lives, the well-being, the care, the protection of children has just been completely sidelined. These Labour MPs, don't forget their names.
Yeah.
Don't forget their faces.
Yeah. We'll be out there too, like in Queensland, and on naming the ones, the dangerous ones. And on social media, we'll be naming like the ones in Victoria. And there's so many amazing gender critical activists in Victoria as well. So, but they just had their election November last year. So they've still got a few years, just over 3 years before there's a Victorian election. Hopefully by then, this issue will be well and truly, revealed for what it is.
I always think it's going to be gone soon because it can't sustain. But when you see that it's got the backing of the biggest financial companies, the organisations, corporate groups, behind it, it's hard to see how us little old TERFs are gonna fight it, but we'll just have to
We
keep
need,
getting out there.
we've said this before, we need parents because to come out, stand with us. You know,
Yeah.
we know how the public feels, but they're just afraid. But we
Yeah.
can't do it alone. As
Yeah.
much as we try, we can't do it alone.
Yeah, but we will continue and we will carry on, because the thought of the children being led down this path is just, it's not an option for me.
Yeah, no, it's not. It can't be. But even like we haven't, the Human Rights Commission's decision of the Lesbian Action Group came out just recently too. And lesbians, it's illegal for lesbians of the female kind to gather publicly without allowing these
Lesbians of the male kind to also join them.
The trans lesbians.
Transbians, so
Yeah.
transbians.
And this is the Australian Human Rights Commission.
Yeah.
And you just think, so, you know, and we all know that this gender ideology doesn't believe in same-sex attraction, only you've been born in the wrong body. So allowing the queer community into these events, it's going to be hostile and dangerous for lesbians. And we pointed that out in a submission we did supporting the Lesbian Action Group about the hostility. So what they basically said to these lesbians, if you want to gather, you've got to go underground to do it. Because,
like the good old days.
Yeah. So this is the Human Rights Commission. It has even infected the Human Rights Commission. The Australian Human Rights Commission should be absolutely ashamed. But it's infiltrated the whole of government.
Yeah.
So you look at what's happening with lesbians, and like the children are the ones that are going to have to live with a lifetime of medicalisation and regret. You know, if we can't get it right with kids, I just don't know. Parents are going to lose their kids to the state. Because then you can...
And there's active pressure to separate parents from their children. And please read this article that I've put in the description, because it's a really eye-opening read. All right.
It's depressing, isn't it?
It is a bit depressing at the moment. But we have to keep going. We have to keep pushing.
And if people
we can't not. We've seen too much. We've seen too much.
Yeah.
We know.
But people watch the Child Safeguarding and Consent Forum of 2023, which is the Women's Forum Australia, their YouTube channel. You'll see such incredible people that got up there and spoke in the medical profession and the legal profession. And they're just amazing. I don't know how anyone could watch that and go, oh, these people are speaking bullshit, you know, because they're not. So we need to do it to support these people in those positions that have put their career on hold, or, you know, have opened up to abuse for speaking out. We've got to get out there on the ground and make sure that we continue to do what we're doing, to not let this drop from the public narrative, to not just accept. It's like so many people do. They go, what can I do? I'm only one person. And you look at them and you go, we're all just one person. You come together as a group, and that's, But, you know, and then people go, oh, well, it doesn't affect me. But as soon as it does, they want everyone to jump up and down in support of them. But people have to, you know, since COVID, it's so easy now to disguise yourself wearing a mask. People, you know, 5 years ago, people think it was pretty strange, people walking around with a mask on. Not these days. So there's really no excuse not to come out and support these actions.
Yeah, I agree.
And if they want to be vocal on social media, they just use a false name.
Yeah, I agree. Come out with us, stand with us.
Yeah. Yeah. And make your kids resilient against this.
Yeah.
That's also really necessary for the parents to have this discussion. At the moment, it's not illegal in Queensland like it is in Victoria, to take your kids to a professional to talk through the distress they're going through. But if that comes into Queensland, parents will no longer, they'll have their kids taken off them.
Yeah.
Terrific. Can you imagine someone trying to come in and take your kids? You'd fight tooth and nail, wouldn't you?
Oh, it just breaks my heart to think that there are parents out there that are struggling going through that, or parents that are seeing their children, their daughters, taking testosterone, taking drugs, binding their breasts, and what these parents must be thinking, the ones that don't want to go along with it.
Yeah, and then to be told you're breaking the law, you're a child abuser, we're taking your child from you. And
it's all corporate, it's all for money. Jennifer Billick is awesome. This is another tweet that I saw of her. She says, attempting to disown one's sexed reality is not a human right or a lifestyle choice. It evolves from a corporately cultivated dissociation and indoctrination that we can lift ourselves from the sexed roots of our humanity into another type of human. The transgender human is a corporate construct. And it is. You cannot change your sex.
No matter what they do.
You cannot change your body to fix your mind. It doesn't work like that. And you only realise that because a lot of us went through depression, and maybe it's just a normal part of growing up, but a lot of girls, they go through it more than normal, and to them this is a great fix. And it's really sad when you see them talking in their groups online, because you can see that a lot of these girls don't have anywhere else to talk about it, don't have anyone else to talk about it to. A lot of them go to do their top surgery, which is double mastectomy. They've got no one there helping them to recover. And it's just absolutely heartbreaking that these girls are being lied to in this kind of way. And to say anything to the opposite is hate speech. It's 1984.
And even when Moira presented her motion this week, there were 2 detransitioners there in the watching on, and you listen to their stories, it's just heartbreaking. And I think it was Mel that said that they felt invisible.
Yeah. Well, they're worthless. Now they've pulled out of the big lie. To these trans organizations, they don't exist. They're not human.
They don't want to know anything about them, because it just destroys their illusion that this is so perfect that every child that transitions, there's never one regret.
Well, they'll say it's a 1% regret rate.
Yeah, but then they don't know, as Mel said, you don't go back to the people that mutilated your body and lied to you. So they're basically alone, because the governments don't provide any service to the detransitioners. It must be bloody hell for these detransitioners to think, I've just, after going through all that and realising it didn't deliver the promise that they were given. Imagine doing that to your body, and then there's all these gender affirming, care providers. There's nothing for detransitioners. They're kicked to the curb. They just don't care. Governments just don't care about these detransitioners.
Yeah. Once the money stops flowing from these people, the government doesn't care.
No.
Government doesn't care about you. Really.
Doesn't care about women.
No, it doesn't care about women. When I first moved to Australia, just before we go, because we're going to have to end now, when I came to Australia and I was told, Australia's a racist country. It's not.
No.
But the government does not care about women or children.
No.
The sexism that I've witnessed towards women is off the scale. Like, I've never expected that.
Yeah.
We were literally called Nazis by the government
Yeah.
for organising a women's speaking event.
And then all the harm
So
that
fucked up.
Yeah, when Andrews announced that package that I just became aware
Yeah.
of, what was over $1 million for all the harm that women gathering to speak had done to the trans community in Victoria. You know, these people, they've got no resilience whatsoever. You know, words of violence. God, grow up. Grow up. It's not violence. Just because you don't like to hear certain things it's not violence.
I think there was a big movement about 10, 15 years ago with parents bringing up kids that they couldn't say no. And there was a big thing about never saying no to your child.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing the damage that has done.
Yeah.
I say no to my daughter all the time.
She'll grow up to be a normal human being.
Yeah.
That's what you need. Life isn't always fair.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to keep cracking on.
Yeah.
Because we have to be honest. Okay, so let's leave it there and see you next time then.
Okay. Thanks, Leah. Bye,
All
everyone.
right. Bye.
Yeah.